The other news that's going on around this is J.J. McCarthy, who we talked about briefly. You actually had him as your number 5. The stock is apparently on the rise, performing well in a lot of these different tests and whatnot. Do you think he ends up going in the first round?
Definitely, I think he's going in the first round.
Okay.
Will he end up in the top 5 or the top 10? Right, that is the big question.
Yeah.
Right, and for me, I think if JJ ended up 12 overall with the Broncos, that would be a good fit for him. I would have loved it if he slipped a little bit more and went to the Steelers. I think that would be an ideal situation for him because that would be a second Michigan all over again. But if they're talking about him going into the top 5, they're talking about him going to the Giants. They're talking about him,
in my opinion,
going to the Falcons. So again, for me, I think that's overdrafting. If I'm the Giants, I want them to trade back. Even if you love McCarthy, right? The draft is also about value.
100%.
And
take the best available player.
He's nowhere near the 5th overall player. And we just did this with Daniel Jones. Please, New York Giants, do not
No
do
more
it
experiments.
Again. Do not do it
We don't need
again,
another quarterback
right?
experiment.
First of all, we're about to lose Saquon Barkley because we didn't tag him, right? We need a playmaker. If
and all the notes are saying they're going to tag McKinney and probably let Saquon walk.
If we stay at number 6 overall, right? Again, if Rome Odunze is there, if Malik Neighbors is there, if we drafted another offensive tackle, right? Those are 3 better moves.
Well, that's the other rumor that they're going to go heavy spending on the offensive line in free agency too.
So I put it out there. I think that's the key. We tried building it through the draft and it's not good. We have some young talented players
to a little bit of a combo.
Now you got to bring in some veterans.
Bring in some veteran O-line,
exactly,
and then maybe go draft a pass catcher or something of that nature.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you. Listen, I'm rooting for JJ because I thought the little bit that I saw of him, I saw the promise and what could be, but I definitely wouldn't like him being drafted into a situation where he's expected to play right away. If he can be drafted back end of the first round, but then sit for a year, which you had been talking about earlier, I think that's the ideal situation for him because he can make NFL throws. He does have an NFL caliber arm. He just needs the time to learn the NFL speed in an offense. Now, the other thing, I don't know if this is a smokescreen or what, but we'll talk about our New York Giants a little bit. Rumors around the combine is that the Giants are making it known that they'd be more than happy to go and move up and draft a quarterback. Now, I'll ask you this. Me personally, I feel like just watching how Joe Schoen operates, he doesn't seem to kind of let out too much. Like he only lets out what he more or less kind of wants to be let out. You don't really know the move until it happens with him. I think this is a smokescreen to try and get some other teams scared that the Giants could be trying to move up so they maybe draft a quarterback or something else when they really have their eyes on another player. Personally, I think they have their eyes on either a wide receiver or some type of pass catcher in this draft. Possibly a Brock Bowers.
So think about this, right? So more than likely the first 3 picks are going to be quarterbacks.
Yes.
Right? And we know that the Arizona Cardinals have targeted Marvin Harrison Jr. with the 4th overall pick.
Yep.
So now, again, just do math, right? So if for whatever reason, if the team has to trade up because they want to go get a J.J. McCarthy, right? And then they trade up to 4, right? Now all of a sudden the Giants are going to get to now the only team that's in front of them is the Chargers, right? And realistically,
they're not drafting a quarterback.
All right, they're not drafting a quarterback. They're most likely going to be a offensive lineman. So that means the Giants at 6 now could get the best wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr.,
playing the game,
whoever you want,
playing
right?
the game.
So, but again, do I think if the Giants had the opportunity to trade up and draft Drake May, do I think if Drake May slipped in the draft that the Giants would jump at the opportunity to get him?
So don't trade up for him, but if he slipped.
If he slipped to number 4, right, where, let's say, hypothetically,
I get what you're saying. Okay.
If it went Caleb, it went Jane Daniels,
sure,
and then it went Marvin Harrison Jr., right? Now, all of a sudden, I think, the Cardinals are going to be there.
Now
Our receiver is gone. Let's trade back. It's a very, very deep draft. Let's get some more talent. Giants are moving up 2 spots. They'll probably only have to give up a second and a third combination.
Sure.
And so that's the type of subtle move to get a young player.
They won't have to give up as
behind
much too because
Daniel
the
Jones.
Cardinals aren't looking for a quarterback.
Again, Listen, if we let Saquon walk, we're not going to be that good. So let Daniel Jones get beat up again. Let Drake May learn, and then bring him out next year and get him a whole bunch of offensive weapons. That would be the ideal scenario. So if we're drafting Drake May with the 4th overall pick, I like that. If that's not it, then I don't want to do it.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And again, like I said, I think this is a lot of smoke screening to kind of protect what the player that they really want for some other teams to draft quarterbacks maybe first. But again, you never know. And again, it's not like the Giants haven't figured out a quarterback either, too. They still have things to go and figure out. But there's so many other deficiencies on the team. I'd rather just see them get better and get the best available player possible. And if that ends up being a quarterback, then so be it. But I would just, there's other areas in the team that need work. So now we move quickly to the free agency talk before we go back to the hardwood and basketball. Mike Evans re-signs 2-year deal. You like it?
Love it. Smart move by Mike Evans. Smart.
Makes me think they'll bring back Baker too as well.
Agreed. Yeah. But listen, at the end of the day, right, like, and this is what the Giants aren't doing, right? There are certain staples in your locker room.
Sure.
Mike Evans is one. If he hit free agency, there's probably going to be 5 or 7 teams after him, right? He still showed he got it. He's a veteran presence. A lot of the players love him because if you get in a little brawl, he's got your back, and every team member
big dude
has
too,
his back.
man.
Exactly. Putting up 1,000 yards a clip.
Sure.
So I think they did the right thing. 2 years, $26 million a pop. So for $52 million, 35
guaranteed.
I think that's the perfect setup. They did the right thing.
Yeah, and listen, he's been a buck, his whole career. If he can stay there for good money, I mean, why leave?
No state income taxes.
He's got the home, the no state income taxes is a great point. And the Bucks weren't bad this year. They were a playoff team. This is
the division is wide open.
The division is wide open. I completely agree. You bring Baker back, all of a sudden, you're one of those teams that's lurking in the NFC. You could be, climbing closer to that NFC title game.
Again, Baker just has to be at the right price. I mean, in a perfect world, if he's around $35 million, that's solid. As soon as you start to get in the $40+ million range, I wouldn't be guaranteeing anything more than 2 years. And I would still draft a quarterback to groom.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that's a good idea. You still bring Baker back. You get him at a decent value, at least for this year.
Again, a Bo Nix on that team might be nice.
Yeah,
right?
It wouldn't
You're
be terrible. You definitely like some type of a quarterback behind Baker to set up a future.
Same vein, got a little moxie,
yes.
right? So
there's another young quarterback on the roster, but through the preseason, he didn't really show much.
Yeah.
It might be Driscoll from Florida. I think that's actually who it is. I could be mistaken,
yeah, I know
but I think that's who it was. But Baker clearly outplayed him through the preseason, and then obviously last season we saw Baker was good. And it's funny, it's coming from a guy who used to not even like Baker. I'm actually kind of rooting for Baker a little bit. It's kind of cool. It's a good story. Now, in terms of free agency, right? There's two really big dominoes now, okay? Obviously, I'll kind of jump ahead a little bit. Russell Wilson, just informed by the Broncos that he will not be returning. They're cutting him. That is an expensive cut. But the reason that I bring him up first is just because now I'll circle it back to, as much as I'm interested or intrigued by what Russell Wilson ends up doing, I think a lot of what happens with Russell Wilson is going to be predicated on what happens with one Kirk Cousins.
Listen, I think, Kirk Cousins knows how to play the system. So I think
I heard Atlanta too.
And that was something I told you earlier in the year too. And again, I think Atlanta wants to win, right? So Kirk Cousins in that system would help them win. An experienced quarterback
would help a lot with Atlanta.
And then think about it, let's say you draft a Bo Nix, if a J.J. McCarthy was there at the bottom of the first round, maybe trade back up, right? I think that would have been a great opportunity.
Because then you can make the free agency move and then still go and get, exactly,
absolutely, right? But I don't, let's see how that plays out. Now, everybody's talking about, Russell Wilson should really sign with the Steelers.
Steelers is the big name,
But at the end of the day, right, Pittsburgh is blue-collar, rugged, and...
Yeah, you can't be walking in there saying, talk to my agency if you want to talk to me, please.
Russ is
Hopefully Russ has learned something, too, through these...
We'll say he's a little finesse, right? He's a little finesse, right? Where Pittsburgh is a little bit more rugged. So,
a little?
So
that is rugged. That is rugged USA right there, man. Blue collar.
The team that would fit Russ the best, the Cowboys. Think about it. Think about it for a second.
It's not going to happen.
Think about it for a second.
It's not going to happen.
You could sign him for the veteran minimum, $2 million, right? He needs to rebuild his career.
That's true.
Right? He needs to be with a playoff team. There's no guarantee that he's going to be a starter, right? And think about it. If I'm the Cowboys, why not sign him to a 2-year deal just in case things don't work out with with Dak? You got a veteran quarterback, right, to keep things going on that team.
But do you think Russ? I don't think Russ wants to sit. I think Russ wants to play.
I think Russ needs to be in the right situation, right? And the right situation is having an elite team around him, right? The Cowboys had an elite defense. They got CeeDee Lamb, right? They have a strong offensive line. They need to figure out some stuff with Tyron Smith, but they have the recipe of the things that Russ has had and looked for in the past. But ultimately, yes. Do I think it's going to happen? No. But right, if I'm the Cowboys and I'm thinking next level and things doesn't look like they're going to work out with Dak, why wouldn't I want to lock up Russ so that I could then draft a quarterback and try to bridge the gap? And here's the thing. Okay. What if Dak gets hurt? Again, what if, first of all, you haven't been winning with him, so why pay him $60 million? And right now you can't tag him, you can't trade him. Now all of a sudden, maybe, just maybe, you bring in Russ, maybe he'll ask for a trade. And now you can get something back for him versus him just walking.
I think when I look at Russ and Kirk Cousins, I think the three teams that are most likely to end up being involved in with those two players respectively, the Steelers, the Vikings, or the Falcons. I think between those three teams, those two quarterbacks end up taking the spots on two of those teams. That's honestly how I see it breaking down. Now, a lot can happen from now and then. Who knows? Maybe one of these teams that's drafting higher up decides to go and make a move and get a more veteran quarterback. I probably doubt it just because they're probably in more of like the rebuild mindset. But who's to say the Bears wouldn't want to go and potentially then bring in like a more experienced type quarterback and then use their draft capital to go and build around that? There's a lot of moving parts inside of this offseason that's going to affect where both Russ and Kirk end up. Now, the other news I want to talk to you before we want to go back to the hardwood, all right, a little NBA, but the big franchise tag news, okay? So we had T. Higgins get tagged up by the Cincinnati Bengals, and then you guys just informed me today that L'Jarius Sneed gets tagged up by the Chiefs. Now, I'll tell you my thoughts on the Bengals move, and this is very close to what I thought was going to happen during the season. Higgins had somewhat of an up and down year, just had some injuries, consistency. But when he got on the field and when he got healthy towards the end, you could see it. I mean, when Justin Jefferson's walking up to you going, yo, boy, you different for that. You different for that. You got game. And T. Higgins has game. If you put him on almost any other team in the league, he's a number one receiver. There's no doubt about that in my mind. This, to me, tells me that the Bengals are sitting there. They've probably got something in principle agreement with Chase already. But they probably told Chase, listen, we're going to pay you. You're going to be the guy that we're going to long-term set up with the contract. But we want to go for it this year. And to go for it this year, we got to be at our most potent, and that's with you and T and who's the smaller guy, not number 83. I'm drawing a blank, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, Boyd. But he's walking in free agency.
So they have another guy, Ilya Sovas or whatever, came out early on. So I think the Bengals want to run it back, build on their offensive line.
So I disagree, man. I really think they made that move because they're going to trade T. Higgins. At the end of the day, think about this. If I am T. Higgins, you just saw Mike Evans sign for 2 years and $26 million. Yeah. That is your floor.
Yeah.
That is your floor.
But he's making close to the league top right now with that franchise tag,
He's getting 20, right? So I would play out for 1 year. Guess what? They can't do it again because if they were to tag him the following year, they'd be giving him over $30 million in that 1 year. So if I'm T, I think they tag him. They're going to do what the Chiefs did, right? You tag Snead, you tag T. Higgins, right? And you try to trade them and get something back for them just because of their age and their position and really, really desirable. So that's what I think is going to end up happening with those two players. And for all reports, it seems like the Chiefs
that's definitely going to happen.
Are very close to signing Chris Jones to a 3-year, $80 million.
If you're going for that 3-peat deal, you have to resign
And again, you're taking care of your players. He's a part of the core four that's been winning those championships,
100%.
and he's been leading defense. Now, I
said
third
most important piece to that franchise right now.
And I'll say this before. I said, if I could get 2 first-rounders for Chris Jones, I trade him. Snead is, 27 years old. You might be able to get a first, a second, and a third for him.
We weren't going to get 2 for Chris just because of his age.
Right? So guess what? If I could get a first, a second, and a third, there you go. Now you get to rebuild with that and continue to stay young.
Sure.
So I like that move. And the Chiefs have proven they can develop wide receiver. Cornerbacks.
Absolutely. Listen, so I think we agree on the Snead thing. I think they're going to try and move Snead, and I think they're going to get some draft capital because what teams don't need a shutdown corner? that sometimes is a finishing piece for a certain team. Team like the Lions, for example. I think the Bengals are going to go for it. That's the only place where I think we differ. I think they're going to try to go for it this year. And then if T walks after that, then T walks.